to Simpler. We are three pastors, husbands, and fathers on a journey to make life simpler by holding Jesus as the core for every belief and practice. This journey has shaped us to be more like Christ, freed us from the shame of failure, and encouraged us to a deeper love of our Lord and God. We invite you to join us in the discussions that have shaped and continue to shape our lives.
Fighting that I like.
That's cool.
I like it.
What if you had done this when you were little, man? You would have loved it.
Oh, dude. I don't know. Younger. I would have liked it. I don't know if I would have liked it when I was little. I was a coward little. So
you don't think it would have changed it?
No.
Too many other things.
Yeah. But I love it. I should be blue belt by the end of the year. That's my hope.
Cool.
And then 3 to 4 years to get purple.
And then what's after purple?
Brown
And then black.
I got one of those.
Got brown belt.
I wear it when I dress up.
And
goes with my brown shoes.
There you go.
I was thinking
brown skin.
I thought you were talking about something else.
No, I have a brown belt. It's actually reversible. It can be a black belt if I flip it around.
I had a reversible belt.
I still thought we were not talking about a belt.
Yeah, no. Well, now I'm talking about a belt. I couldn't find it the other day, and I was like, I really need this belt. And it was one of those ones that like had a mechanism where you have to like, I guess, so most of them you can just literally turn it over. This was one where the buckle was set, and you had to like pull it out, turn the belt. So one of those.
Okay.
And I think I broke it, and it just, I guess maybe I blacked out and threw a fit in the closet, and it just is gone now. I don't know. But that story wasn't irrelevant at all. I just thought, you know what? I had one. I had a reversible belt once, and it was really nice to me. And I had a good time. Yeah.
Dr. Pepper, back on the menu.
I'm really sleepy.
Oh, hey, Dr. Pepper. We're not talking about Dr. Pepper and fighting and my belts today, Ryan. What are we talking about?
We're not. Something that's been on my mind for a couple of weeks, Philippians 2:14, do everything without grumbling or complaining. And just thinking about why we as Christians should find it difficult to grumble and complain because of our hope in Christ.
God, Ryan, I got caught off in traffic, man. They never have my coffee. Housing is too expensive. And those kids are terrible influences on my daughter. And I don't want to host the holidays this year.
What was too expensive?
Housing.
I said housing. I kept the coffee complaint going. I was
gotcha.
like, I don't have my coffee. Coffee's too expensive. Housing's too expensive.
Gotcha. Well, actually, Pierce.
Sorry, these are real complaints. I'm not laughing about it.
No, I can tell, man.
Yeah.
Spittle on your beard.
Yeah, there you go.
It's interesting because like there are a few people I know who just complain about everything, like everything. And there's not a person in their life that they don't complain about. There's not a situation in their life that they don't complain about. And it's exhausting. Like it's exhausting. And so I've been thinking more about that lately. Like, why do we complain? Why do we, why do we grumble? Why do we get unhappy? Why are we, and I think ultimately, I think it's because of a misplaced view of contentment. And I think if we thought of ourselves as first, as spiritual people, if we thought of ourselves first as people of the kingdom, if we thought of ourselves first as people who will one day hear the trumpet sound and the voice of the archangel and see Christ our King returning, then and we've talked about this a while back too, but if our perspective is eternal, if it's an eternal perspective, then it begins to eliminate what we have to grumble and complain about. And, look, so Paul, he talks in 2 Corinthians 11, he says he was shipwrecked a day and a night he spent in the open sea. He's talking about of his beaten times without number. He talks about all these things that he went through. He's not complaining. He's making the point that like you call these super apostles like amazing men. Look at all these things that I've done. He's not complaining, but like the argument could be made that even when Paul did all this, he's doing this because he wants people to know Christ. And like I can't imagine that any of us would be excited to be a night in the open sea, clinging to a piece of ship that's busted apart. Like that would be a little bit terrifying. Like
a little bit.
Golly, like I still think
I've watched way too many shark movies.
I know I love shark movies, but I still think back to you and I snorkeling in 2008 and just realizing how deep the water was around us.
Yeah.
And realizing how small we suddenly felt in this ocean off of this private island. Like it was a cruise resort, but we had gone under the rope and like,
I regularly have a dream where I'm in the water with sharks.
Do you?
Because I almost fell in a shark tank when I was a kid at like an aquarium.
What?
Which would have been fine. Like it's
How am I just now hearing about this?
I was like real little. So
it would have been fine.
To be fair, I'm saying it was one of those tanks where like the sharks are fed all the time. Like the chance
so they know.
They're like, hey,
when it hits the water.
It was one of those ones where you can watch the diver. You can watch the diver. You're like standing over, and the diver gets in and goes in and feeds all the sharks and stuff. So I think this is what I remember, like falling forward and my parents grabbed me and pulled me back. But since that day, there's been like this sense of like I have this recurring dream where I'm like in the water with sharks. So yeah, I'd be terrified.
That'd be terrifying. Yeah, so I think we'd be terrified. I think we would be like, this is not the most pleasant thing I've ever endured. But also like Paul's view of everything earlier in Philippians is to die is gain, right? Like if I die, I gain Christ, right? And I just think that perspective, an eternal perspective, keeps us from grumbling. I know this is such a dumb example, but it was really profound to me, and I've used it before. Maybe in church, but maybe here, that one time I was catching an early flight and this older woman kind of sat near me in the terminal, and we were in Dallas, and she immediately kicks over her brand new Starbucks latte that she had just bought on the floor. And she goes, "Hey, will you watch my bag? I'm going to go get some paper towels and get another drink." And I said, "Sure." And then I started thinking, oh man, they're going to ask me in a minute, did somebody leave you with the bag? And I'm like, this is not your own. And I'm like, yes. But anyway, this sweet older woman comes back and I'm like, well, that's not a fun way to start your day. It's like 6 in the morning, 6:30 in the morning. She goes, what? No, it's just a coffee. Like, you can't let things like that shape your day. And then I was thinking about how many times things like that have shaped my day. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, and I was able to discern really quickly, and I just said something to the effect of, "Are you a believer?" And she said, "Yeah." And so then we started talking about Christ, and her view was just like, "It's a coffee. It's an airport coffee, so I spent $12 on it.
Expensive,
but it's $12.
Yeah,
you know, it's like it happened. It's fine. It's not a big deal." And it's amazing how many times the little things. I think back to when we were doing marriage conferences, and from Song of Solomon. Yep, catch for us the little foxes that ruin the vineyard, and these little things that add up to cause people to grumble and complain all the time and be unhappy and miserable all the time because of the pile of little things that have come up. Yeah. And I just think that we as Christians, we ought to be some of the happiest people on the planet. Mm-hmm. Like we ought to be some of the most content people on the planet.
Yeah.
And I don't like politics. I don't trust government. I don't like this tax system in our government. There's a lot of things that I don't like, and I can have conversations with people about it, but I'm also not daily complaining about it and letting it impact my mood. Mm-hmm. And maybe that's kind of the difference. Like there's a way to have conversations about things because there are hard things. Yeah. Somebody that I was just talking to recently, they got charged by our local hospital group, Shannon. They got charged an exorbitant amount for like IV fluid, bags of IV fluid. And they got charged for like 20 bags and they only had like one, right? So they went back and they were fighting it. And that's not complaining. That's like, hey, I'm not going to pay you this extra $8,000 for IV fluid that I didn't use, but I do think that we believers who have all of our hope in Jesus, and maybe that's the problem. Maybe you don't actually have all your hope in Jesus, but like we should just be some of the most content, happy people on the planet.
Yeah.
Because whatever happens to me today, I have Christ.
Yeah.
I'm completely righteous. I'm completely holy and forgiven in the eyes of God. And whether my life ends unfortunately today or whether my life comes to an end in 90 more years or whether Christ returns, I'm with Jesus.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And that should be the shape of our lives. And so I'm curious, like, why do you think we grumble so much? Is it just a misplaced view of worth or value? Like, what are your thoughts? Why is it so easy as Christians to be grumblers?
I think one of the big ones is that it's which we should break this norm, but the social norm of it, right? Like you had mentioned the other day, like the first thing that people say, well, how you doing? Well, I'm busy. And so I think there's this, you go to the negative and same crap, different day, like that type, all these like go-to statements where like, because like the typical human adult experience is you pay bills, you pay taxes, you die. And so you got all these negative things that go with it, and there's no positive things that go with it. So I wonder how much that social norm like trumps the way people or handles the way people might handle these conversations and just complain. I'm curious. I would actually venture to say most of them probably just have a negative mindset and that bleeds into it. But I'm curious, like how much just the normality. I
was going to say that negative mindset might just be a cultural perspective.
That's true.
It's a good point that like, for whatever reason in our culture here, it's almost like the busier you are and the crazier things are in life, the more interesting you are to other people.
Yeah,
and it's almost like that's the reason you say like, it's been crazy busy lately. Because if you said, man, it's been really nice lately, I haven't had a lot to do. Like, it's not that interesting, right? Yeah. No one's going.
People think you're lazy.
Or no one's going like, did you hear about what's going on in their life?
Yeah.
Now on the flip of that, I want to be the ultimate troll for those people when I have a house in the mountains someday. And they're like, man, what'd you do this week? I sat on my porch in the mountains.
Yeah. Heck yeah.
Oh my gosh, you didn't do anything? Nope.
That's so great.
Yeah.
It's awesome. Yeah.
But I think you're right though, Pierce. I think that it's almost conversational now. It's how we conversate. And it would be really good for us as believers to shift the tide of that, to begin to change that. Like to instead of making a flippant joke about it or a flippant complaint about it, to actually, there are a couple of people in our church, and when you ask them, every time you ask them, how you doing? They're like, better than I deserve, and it's just different than the norm, right? Because the norm is, oh man, it was a rough week. Oh, I'm really tired. This, like, I don't think you get through adulthood without being tired every day. Like, and especially once you start having kids, I don't think you quit being tired. You like, And so I remember when Asher and Riker were little, and my sister, I was like, man, we're not getting any sleep. And she goes, well, yeah. She goes, you don't get any sleep either when they're 16 or 17 and they don't have a curfew, but you're still kind of like listening for them to come home, and you want to make sure they made it home okay or whatever. And like, you're still going, hey, did you make it home all right? Like, you're still waiting up until the middle of the night, And so like, but we complain about everything instead of like, we could flip that on its head and be like, because I've told new parents, depending on what your kid is like, you have at least 6 weeks of feeling like you're just a zombie. You're just going to be tired. But how awesome. Like this little life is in your house now. And this little, like, what a blessing. Like this is a
matter
blessing.
Of perspective.
Yeah. And instead of grumbling, there's spit up on everything. We had no idea as new parents. I had held a baby. Like I'm 12 years and 16 years older than my other sisters, but I wasn't responsible for their diaper changes or whatever. I had no idea how many outfits a new baby's going to go through in a day.
Dude, for real.
Because of Dookie leaking through the diapers and spit up on everything. And how often you would change them.
Yeah.
And then immediately
have to change them.
You get the fresh diaper on them, you zip them up into that onesie, and then they go, and you're like, oh, dad gummit. And then, like, I had no idea how projectile poop would shoot off. Like, you just don't know. Oh, dude.
I've never had the projectile poop situation.
There was one time.
Took the diaper down and cleaned them up and then lifted to put him in the diaper. And it was like when I pushed down on his legs, it just boom.
It's like cocking a gun, dude. I did that with Riley in the middle. She's like maybe 3 weeks old.
Had to clean it off the door.
We're still, dude, that's how it was for us. So it's 3 a.m. We try to not turn on a whole bunch of lights because we know we're going back to sleep.
Right.
I'm changing the diaper. The same thing. I pull back Riley's legs. It's like, dude, just shot across the red room. And Hannah's coming back in, like wiping her eyes, and she's got stuff. And I was like, watch out for the floor. It was like on our dresser, like under our TV, across the floor.
Oh, man. But it's like your perspective can be to complain about all that.
Yeah.
Man, we're doing more laundry now than ever. We're doing more of this. We're getting up. Or your perspective can be, look at the joy of this life, man.
Yeah.
You know what shifted for me with my kids? Like, I'm not sure. I can't remember. It's too long ago. how my perspective was with Seth and Aiden when they were real little. I mean, Aiden especially, we didn't know Aiden was allergic to everything. So like Aiden literally cried for like 4 months. So it was like,
that's rough.
It was just like,
and that feels
chaos.
very helpless too as a
yeah,
parent.
it's like, you don't know what to do. Doctors don't know what to do. So that was chaos. I'm sure I probably whined a little bit in the middle of that because it was not fun. But Hayes wasn't able to do a bottle normally or breastfeed because he had a hole in the roof of his mouth when he was born. So we had to have these special bottles. And so it would take a long time to feed him when he'd get up at night to eat, because we'd have to we had these special bottles where you squirted milk into his mouth, but you couldn't do it very fast. Right. So it's like, it would take like 45 minutes to feed him every time he got up. But when he was born, for a little bit, we thought he had a bad heart. So they told us. So there's that moment when he's born where I'm like, there's a good chance I'm going to lose my son. And then 2 weeks later, I'm up for the second time in the middle of the night feeding him. You don't care. There wasn't anything in me that was like, this sucks, right? So it was the perspective shift for me, which is I think kind of what you're getting at, was the value. With Seth and with Aiden, when Aiden, like, my perspective wasn't I'm about to lose my son. It was just like, why are you still crying? Right? So, but the shift.
You're also a lot younger.
A lot younger.
And so, like, I think, like, we would all argue that the last 20 years have completely changed who we are as men. Yeah. So, like, it's a different story, too. You were a different person with your,
But I do think that the value difference for me was, like, at one point 2 weeks ago, there was a good chance my son was going to die. And now, worst case scenario, I got to be up another 45 minutes with him. Like, so I'm wondering if that's part of it with people too. Like when Paul says, do all things without grumbling or disputing, that you may be blameless and innocent, children of God without blemish in the midst of a crooked and twisted generation, among whom you shine as lights in the world, holding fast to the word of life. It's almost like they forget why we're here. The value system is different. Yeah. If I think what you said earlier, Pierce, I'm just here because I just got to make money, pay taxes, and die. If that's my perspective of life, of course you're going to whine and grumble because there's no point. But if my value system is different, I'm here to be a light in the world, holding fast to the word of life, being blameless and innocent. And the way I exemplify that is by not grumbling and complaining. Then if I recognize that I'm here to be a light in the world, then I'm like, well, yeah, my perspective is different. And so things hit me different. Now the circumstances of life don't feel as weighty. Yeah. I can kick a coffee over in the morning at an airport and go, well, that sucks. I got to go buy another coffee, right? Instead of going, oh my gosh, this day's done. Because the coffee doesn't make any difference in my life whatsoever. I can suffer through harsher circumstances and feel the weight of the circumstance, but it's still not shake me ultimately because I recognize that my value rests in Jesus and I'm here to be a light. Yeah. How am I going to be a light? You say this all the time on Sundays, is like, why is it that you look just like everybody else? Yeah. Why does your marriage look just like everybody else's marriage who doesn't know Jesus? Right. So it's like, if the value system's different, I think it affects how you act, which would imply that you do all things without grumbling or disputing. Yeah. Or grumbling or complaining. Yeah.
It's, and it's not just the petty things. Like, I'm not saying, let me say it the other way. There are things in life that are painful and hard and miserable and overwhelming. And we can still even view those things through the lens of Jesus. Like, I mean, I'm alive today. We're sitting here in Steven's studio recording a podcast that we created 5 years ago. We've been doing this 5 years now. And this is a pretty good day. And we're able to be here and create content to help people focus on Jesus and think about Christ. And like, this is a pretty good day. Like, and when I get home, there are things that need to be done. I need to get the boys set up to mow the lawn, and I need to pay some bills, and we have a couple of errands to run, but it's like, it's fine. It's life. And I have an opportunity in this life to love my wife, to love my kids, to exemplify the characteristics of Jesus, to have an impact on the people around me for Christ. Like, there is an eternal weight here in life that is so far beyond the doldrums and the monotony of the day to day that, like, if you're right, Micah, if you just think life is about you live, you breathe, you die, you know, and you pay taxes before and after death and all those things, like, if that's it, then all of this sucks.
Yeah.
If I have the opportunity, I don't know, man. Like, here's how I think about it. And I know that it might be a little bit different. It shouldn't be different for me as a preacher, but people might go, oh, well, you're a preacher, so you should think that way. Here we are 2,000 years after Christ. And I am somebody who believes in Jesus, lives in Tom Green County, and I can have an impact for the eternal kingdom of God right here in the community in which I live. Mm-hmm. That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Like, Paul and Peter are gone, you know?
Yeah.
Like, we can do that now, and we can have that impact. And my home can be a home where Christ is exalted, and where my kids feel loved and cared for, and where my wife feels treasured. And like, what am I complaining about?
Yeah.
You know, and I think about a lot of the marriage trouble that I see in couples, and a lot of times it's like, well, they don't ever help me with this, or they don't ever do this part, or they don't. And it's just like, I get wanting to feel important, I do, but like, if Christ came to be a servant, and if my attitude, Philippians 2, if my attitude is to be the same as Christ, that I came to be a servant, then I want to serve people. Mm-hmm. And then I'm not complaining about it when I have to serve people, you know? Does that make sense? Like,
yeah.
So many people, and I get weary of this, but so many people will be like, well, I've done this and this and this and this for my spouse and for my kids, and they just don't seem to care, and they're not doing this. And I'm like, okay, so you weren't actually in this to serve them. You were in this to see what you would get out of it. And that's a big difference.
Yeah.
Right. And so like, I want to be a blessing. And so like, if your attitude is, I'm here for the kingdom, I'm an eternal person, I'm part of the kingdom of heaven, I'm serving at the pleasure of my king. Ooh, one of my favorite texts, Luke 17, 7 through 10-ish. And it says that when the servant comes in from the field, the master doesn't say, here, sit down and let me fix you dinner. He says to the servant, fix me dinner. And then he doesn't thank the servant, you know, because the servant has only done his duty. So that when he goes to thank the servant says, no, I'm only a servant. I've only done my duty. And if we would sit here and if we would quit trying to get the accolades and get the praise and get the recognition, and if we would just serve at the pleasure of the king, I think we would have a lot less to complain about. Mm-hmm. I think so many people walk through this life wanting all the credit, wanting the pleasure or the praise, wanting the pats on the back, and they complain because I'm not getting the recognition I deserve, or I'm not getting the honor that I deserve, or I'm not getting, screw all that. Like, live for the pleasure of the king, live for the sake of eternity, live as though your blip, your tiny blip in human history is for something of eternal value.
Yeah. Well, that's a correct perspective of who God is and who they are in Christ, if they're people of faith. And so like the what we've highlighted in regards to seems to be the core of most complaints, is either pride or like desperation. Like I imagine it can still be centered in pride, of the sense of like, I deserve better or whatever that might be, or life's too hard or whatever. So like around these things, which are still both very self-centered viewpoints. And so if we as believers understand who Christ is, what he's accomplished, and who we are in him, and that if we just have the proper mindset, then that will just be stripped away. And therefore, again, having open eyes to see the opportunities in this life to glorify God, honor him, and the beauty within that, like the beauty in that partnership, right? The fact that we can participate the way that the way Peter talks about it, that we can participate in the things of God and do his works here and now. Then naturally, like if it all goes back to understanding who we are in Christ and what he's accomplished for us, that's going to open our eyes and continually breathe life into every aspect of our life, how we communicate with others, how we approach our job, how we approach our family, how we approach all these things, where it's not going to be a breeding ground for negativity, but opportunities to glorify God and to exemplify his character and nature in the midst of that.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's a good way to say is opportunities. Mm-hmm. Like, it's a perspective shift where you recognize this is an opportunity for you to live in a way where you shine as lights in the world.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So I think two mindsets. One would be, this life is about me. The other mindset is, this life is about Jesus.
Yeah.
I think those are maybe like, how do I say this well? I'm trying to be a little bit more diplomatic with this. It's not going to happen. So if you're a whiner and complainer, it's pretty clear where your value system lies.
Yeah.
I don't know how to say it more diplomatically than that.
Yeah.
And I don't mean like, maybe we should define it this way, like, or maybe be more clear on our definition here. If you've had any financial conversation with me, you've probably heard me complain about the tax system.
Yeah.
This is not what Paul's talking about.
No.
This is a life that is lived like, where everything's like, oh my gosh.
I don't think you're complaining about it, though. I think it goes back to what we were talking about earlier. I think you're having a discussion about the tax system. It's in that vein of finances. Like, it's a stupid system.
Yeah.
And
is it complaining, though? And I'm like, I think it sucks. Like, let's go to something you said a second ago, the death tax. Like, how crazy is it that you get taxed your entire life, and then if you make over, if your net worth is more, or if your estate's worth more than a certain amount, you have to pay taxes on that. So it's like, hey, let's not reward you for doing well. Like, let's take some of that away. Like, but you don't think that's complaining about the system?
I don't know. Yeah, maybe. But I feel like it's
different than what I think he's talking about.
Yeah, I feel like it's different.
That's what I meant by we should define it a little bit.
Yeah, because I feel like I feel like there are some people who are just discontent people.
Yeah, like we both shared stories about getting crap all over our rooms with our children.
Yeah.
And at the moment, that's not pleasant. Like, there's an aspect of having to clean up the room, and I bet the next day you'd text friends like, "Oh, this crazy thing happened last night." But because people know Ryan, because people know Michelle, they're not thinking like, "Oh, he hates his kid." They're thinking like, so you're not at your heart a complainer or whatever, however we want to define that or say the word there, but you happen to be speaking like, this negative situation happened to me. And so I guess by social definition, you complain about a thing that happened, but it's not characterizing your heart towards your family, your heart towards the situation. Now we're laughing about it.
Yeah. Like, I don't think that characterizing a negative situation has to be complaining in the same way that I don't think Paul was complaining in 2 Corinthians 11.
True.
I do wonder if, his tone in Philippians seems to be kind of wrapped around like some of the persecution. Let's see.
Well, it's Philippians 2. And so he's already started in Philippians 2 saying, have this same attitude in yourself, which was in Christ Jesus. Yeah. He's already talked about servanthood. So
end of chapter 1, it has been granted to you, verse 29, for the sake of Christ, that you should not only believe in him, but also suffer for his sake, engage in the same conflict you saw I had and now still have. After he says the grumbling and complaining thing, where does he say it? Verse 17, even if I am to be poured out as a drink offering upon the sacrificial offering of your faith, I'm glad and rejoice with all of you. There seems to be this, like, I'm wondering if he is specifically referring to
persecution,
that kind of persecution with grumbling and complaining because you're a
servant of God.
Yes.
So let's put all the pieces together, right? Because chapter 1, he's talked about, I'm in prison, and some people are preaching Christ out of envy and some out of love. Either way, I don't care, so long as Christ is proclaimed. You pointed out verse 29, it has been granted to you on behalf of Christ not only to believe on him, but to suffer for his name. He also says in the couple of verses before that we're rejoicing, but those people aren't. This is proof that we're going to be saved and they're not. And then he says, have this attitude. So serve one another, right? So Philippians 2, 3, and 4, or 3 and 4, do nothing from selfish ambition or vain conceit, but in humility consider others better than yourselves. Let each of you look not only to your own interest, but also to the interest of others. Then be a servant like Christ. Then work out your salvation with fear and trembling. Then don't grumble, so that you can be lights in the world. Like, there's a whole context here.
Yeah.
And it seems to be like the Christian life. Yeah. So there's persecution, there's suffering, but there's also like the service of God. There's also the service of others. So like, why are you being a little crybaby?
Well, which makes me think like all the things we've mentioned outside of this context in our world right now, probably pale in comparison to the suffering that you would experience at this time when, like, Paul's in prison, he's being persecuted, even amongst the churches, like at Corinth, he's being like sloughed off for these quote unquote super apostles. Like, there's all these things going on, and then here's the dude who's in prison saying, "Hey, do everything without grumbling and complaining." Yeah. Because then you. Well,
one of your favorite texts in Acts 5, after they've been beaten, they're rejoicing that they were counted worthy to suffer for the name of Christ. Right, yeah. They're not complaining that they were beaten. Right. They're like rejoicing that they're partaking in Christ's sufferings.
So I'm wondering if maybe back to the question of definitions, if this looks different than like saying, I don't like that we have a death tax. I think that's complaining, but I don't think it's what Paul's speaking of here. I don't think, right? I don't. Now, maybe it'd be different if like my entire world of conversations with you guys was wrapped around me complaining about the tax system.
Yeah, it's true.
Right.
At some point, you guys would be like, do you care about
your identity?
Yeah, do you care about anything else but this?
Yeah.
Right? That's what the question you would ask me.
True.
But because that's not my perspective, my perspective is I want to, good point. I want to take the opportunity in the life I have here and now to shine as lights in the world, to shine as a light in the world, to live for the glory of Jesus. That's going to dictate how I approach all situations. And I feel like that might be different than someone who, everything in their world is an opportunity for whining and complaining. Have you ever noticed, like the difference in a husband who has a phenomenal marriage and a husband who doesn't? Like, you rarely hear the husband who has a phenomenal marriage be like, oh my gosh, she's like the worst thing in the world. Like,
he's not complaining about his wife. She's not the old ball and chain.
Yeah.
He's not trying to escape her.
I know that like hits home probably for a lot of people, but that might be the most apt example of like an illustration here is that someone who has a correct perspective of their marriage. Well, let's say it's not even a correct perspective, just in general, even a non-believer who's got a decent relationship with his wife is gonna, like, you're not gonna whine and complain about something that's good, right?
Yeah, right.
So if my viewpoint of life is that it's good because of Jesus, then that's going to affect how I speak.
Sure.
If my perspective of life is based on me and not based on how good it is because of Jesus, I'm probably going to whine and complain about everything.
Right.
Yeah. There was I got called to the carpet probably a few months ago.
Whoa.
Was it jujitsu?
No.
That's a mat, not carpet.
Oh, my bad.
Oh, excuse me.
Would get carpet burns
That's
all the time.
that's how you know the difference. You would get carpet. You should bring, never mind. So anyway, I was talking about the work being done at the house like last year, and how we had done a kitchen remodel, and we had done a bunch of stuff at the house, like taking up carpet, putting down new flooring, and you naturally kind of say the positives and negatives in the midst of that. And so I'd found myself like erring on the side of the negative for some of the processes and for some of the things and some of the headaches
Which totally makes sense in the construction world.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Everything's a headache.
I know. Yeah. So like, I think talking about like paying for work and not getting like money's worth and like those types of things, which makes sense to comment on or characterize a situation as negative, like we had mentioned earlier. But I'd found myself saying those things, repeating those stories a whole bunch and just kind of like,
the blessing of the house
all this
and the money
sucks.
you had
Yeah.
to do all that.
Just being like, hey, let's all talk about how these couple things suck so bad. And I was talking to a friend of mine, and I forgot how he said it, but I was like, dude, I'm complaining too much. He goes, yep. And that's all he said. And that whole night I was just like, God, that sucks so bad. Because like, that's not the picture I wanted to paint. It wasn't. I just got caught up in the repetitions of it and the like, this social, like, yeah, everything sucks, right? Like that aspect of it. And I was caught up in it. And I was like, that's so stupid. How petty and dumb. Like, and so that night there's prayerful times. It's just like, God, that's so stupid.
Yeah.
Like using the language you'd mentioned about like sin and stuff like that. That doesn't be a part of my story. Like my life doesn't have to be, I don't need, my language isn't me characterized
why
by.
am I so unhappy about this amazing house
I know,
I have?
right? Why do I have to focus on it now? Now the little negative things are fun little stories, but like, but anyway, yeah. So same thing. Just this being in a, what did you say last time? It's like being in a haze of being caught up in it.
Hey,
I'm gonna put like a haze animation overall.
I wonder like how that. Well, maybe it's a better way to ask. Does it affect how we speak about things that we actually want to? I'm trying to use a different word than complain. like if I'm like, our transmission went out in our Tahoe, a couple months ago. I'm not sure I'm going to go, yay.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. So, but does it affect the way that I quote unquote complain about the situation? I think it does. Like it's instead of me being like, my whole world is wrecked because my transmission went out. I think a correct perspective of life that to your point, Ryan, life is great because of who I am in Jesus.
Yeah.
It does affect how I speak about those things. So I'm trying to find a different word to use besides complaining, since it's kind of like tied to the text, but like I can express disappointment about a situation in a way that's probably not what Paul's talking about here.
Yeah.
Does that make sense to you guys?
Yeah.
And I think that might be the tension that people probably we need to help people figure out is like, it doesn't mean that my transmission goes out and I'm like, I'm not going to talk about it because I don't want to complain.
Mm-hmm.
Does that make sense?
I think there's a difference between stating facts too. You know what I mean?
But like disappointment though is not just stating a fact.
No. But I mean like,
there's like an emotional response.
Yeah. But I think to me, that's, I'm disappointed that happened, but it also doesn't shape your life.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And so Paul says at the beginning here of chapter 2, he says, if there is any encouragement in Christ, having just talked about being a prisoner, having just talked about, to me, is to live as Christ, to die as gain.
Mm-hmm.
So if there's any encouragement in Christ, any comfort from love, any participation in the Spirit, any affection and sympathy, then complete my joy by being of the same mind, having the same love, being in full accord and one mind. So he's going like, look, guys, if you understand that there's encouragement in Christ, if you understand that there's any comfort from love, any participation in the Spirit, affection in my sympathy, then have this same attitude too. So have this attitude that I have the attitude that Christ has, serve one another. Like, and so there's a framework of like, this is what life should look like. I think a little bit of Paul in 2 Corinthians, he talks about suffering and he says, if I am comforted in my affliction, I am comforted so that I can comfort you. Right. And so when a Christian is afflicted and they receive the comfort of God. Now, keep in mind, Paul also says, I despaired of life itself. I thought I would receive the sentence of death. So there's the emotional response to his circumstances where he's like, man, this is it. This sucks. And then God reminded him, no, you put your trust in me, the one who raises the dead, not in yourself. And as Paul pivots to that, he's comforted by God so that he in turn is able to comfort. And when a Christian reacts negatively, perpetually to every situation in their life, we perpetuate that in like, where's the comfort?
Yeah.
Where's the hope?
You're not able to offer comfort for other people because you don't have comfort in your situation.
Yeah. And so we tend to be dour. We tend to point out the negative. Like, it's true of anything. Like people are more inclined, you're looking at whatever you're looking at, a show, you're looking at your friend's performance, you're looking at a paper that you've read or whatever. And our tendency is to go, here's what I didn't like.
Yeah.
That's what our tendency is, to point out the negative, and almost to the exclusion that it's hard for people to encourage other people sometimes, because like we're not.
What is that?
Right. We're not apt to say, hey, that was a good job. And so what we're apt to do is say, well, here's where you messed up. And I think some of it, honestly,
I don't know if that's the same though.
Well, probably not. But
True.
I do think I think this is kind of built into us, probably from the time we're really little, is what I'm saying. Like our worldview is tended
I'm
to
with
be
you
framed
on
with
everything,
the
I think, except for because you're pitting two people by tendencies against each other, one who's a natural encourager and one who's not.
Yeah.
I think that might not be a good example.
Okay, fair enough. Because some people aren't gifted
as personality tendencies.
Yeah. But some people are like Debbie Downer just all the time.
That's different, right?
Yeah.
I'm not an encourager. You've talked about this, how like you had to get used to like I'm not going to say very often to people, man, you did a really good job on that. It's just not in my, I mean, we're not talking about should I do that? I'm talking about like but I don't think it's out of the same part of complaining on everything.
But here's the other thing too. I think you're really encouraging in the sense that I've known you for nearly 24 years, and there is a way that you are encouraging. It's just not going to be how most people think it's encouraging.
Yeah. That's what I mean is like, though, I think not many people are going to look
complaining.
Right.
What I mean is that most of us are wired. I think it's just how our parents talked. Like it's how people talk. We don't tend to talk about the good. We tend to talk about the bad. We tend to, so forget personality for a moment, that some people are naturally gifted to be encouragers. I do think that's a spiritual gift. I'm incredibly thankful for those people who have been in my life. But I think from the time you're a little kid, look, it quits after like second grade that your teacher writes smiley faces on your paper and says, good job. That kind of quits at that point, And then from then on, it's like, here's where you failed. And so we grow up going, oh yeah, that sucks. Oh, this sucks. Oh, I hate this. This is too hard. This is bad. And And our perspective is shaped, I think, from a very early age. And so then we grow into Christians who are just like, yeah, this is really hard. This is miserable.
All right, ready?
Yeah, go.
Here's to exemplify your point on the flip perspective. Something that somebody's really into, that really, really enjoys, like take someone who loves fishing. If they go fishing and catch some amazing fish, they're probably not going to tell you about the time that their trolling motor like messed up for 30 minutes. If they catch their personal best bass, right?
Yeah.
So I think this is actually what you're speaking of.
Okay.
This is a perspective difference, right? So I love fishing. I had this incredible experience fishing. And so I'm going to tell you about the incredibleness of the trip.
Yeah.
Even if there were some bumps along the way, those kind of like fade into the background because what I really want to talk about is the fish I caught.
Yeah, yeah. That's good.
So it is a matter of perspective.
Sure.
Yeah.
If I hate fishing, I'm going to talk about how bad the trip was.
You had to get up early. There were mosquitoes.
If I love fishing and I don't have a great day, I'm going to say something at the end like, man, it was rough, but dude, I'd rather be fishing than doing other stuff.
For example, every time we go on a family vacation, and this past summer we went to a concert. We were in Austin, and we were 3/4 of a mile away from the venue from our hotel, so we just walked over to it. And in walking there, we passed a really nice museum. And I was like, oh man, I would love to go there, because I would love to go there. I'd love to look at the art. I'd love to spend hours in that place. And every time we go on vacation, I will see a museum. I'm like, I would love to go there. I don't, because I know my family would hate it the entire time. They wouldn't care about the brushstrokes. They wouldn't care about the lighting. They wouldn't care about the use of shadow or anything. I would be immersed in it. What we would do later is I'd be sitting here telling you guys, oh, it was amazing. I got to, I drove to Houston 22 years ago when they had Starry Nights on display in Houston, and I went there to see it. And I wish that I had a few years ago driven to Dallas or wherever it was to see the Dead Sea Scrolls. I will do that next time it comes within driving distance. But
I've seen them.
That's so cool. But I would be sitting here telling you guys, oh, I saw this painting and there's this cool thing. And my family would be telling, and my dad dragged us along to this really boring museum. And, Michelle would be like, well, it was really neat to see Ryan in his element, because she's super sweet, So it was really great to see Ryan enjoying himself, but she wouldn't. And so they're like, well, we can do that for you sometime, Dad. And I'm like, no, listen, everything else we're doing, I also enjoy. I enjoy the fishing and the horseback riding and the hiking. I'm having fun. And that's why I don't take them to the museum.
Yeah. So I think what that exemplifies is if someone's perspective is, oh my goodness, can you believe that we've been given life in Jesus?
Yes. Yeah.
And that can never be taken away from us.
Yeah.
And no matter what happens in this life, my security, my identity rests in him, and that can never be changed, never taken away. That becomes the story.
Yeah. And then the spilled coffee or the transmission going out, inconvenient, you're disappointed, maybe even frustrated, but it doesn't shape anything about you.
And I think you can go farther, like even like tragedy. Like it doesn't mean that you don't suffer through it in that moment. But what it doesn't do is it doesn't change the story. Because if the story becomes the circumstance, no matter how tragic the circumstance is, then Jesus isn't actually the story.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like it doesn't mean, what I don't mean is like I remember the emotional tension when I realized my mom was going to die. I think that was more intense than even when she did die, because it was like you're faced with the reality of what's coming. And more so probably even for my dad, right? This is his wife, and he knows she's not going to make it. Well, we're all not going to make it, but she's not going to make it very soon, right?
Yeah.
So that the turmoil of that circumstance though didn't change his story. Still, he still has conversations with nurses that were at the hospital with my mom who will still say like, I don't understand how you were so much different than other people, because his story didn't change just because the circumstance got literally as bad as it could get in this life. That's what I mean. When your perspective is correct, the story doesn't change. It doesn't mean my dad didn't weep. It doesn't mean he didn't have times when it was hard. It doesn't mean he didn't complain about how bad the medical insurance system was, or it doesn't, there were things we had to deal with in the middle of that. And that didn't make those more fun, or we weren't going, yay. but the story didn't change.
Right.
That's kind of my thought with like the fishing example is the story stays because the value is in Jesus.
Well, all right. Let's see if we can narrow this a little bit more, because maybe we were wrong. And let's focus a little bit more. What if do all things without grumbling or disputing? What if disputing is the better translation there? And this is because he's already talked
It's about fighting with each other.
Mm-hmm. He's already talked about serving one another.
He's talking about fighting with each other.
He's already talked about serving one another according to Christ. Yeah.
Price is wrong, Bob.
Right? You know what I mean?
Yeah. No, you're right.
And that's what makes us lights in the world, the unity of the believer.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what it is.
Yeah.
Can we just scratch this whole episode?
Sure, yeah.
So no, this is good.
Man, yeah, all three the episodes we recorded today have been like showing a lot of the heart of what we're
This is good
what
though.
we're doing. Yeah.
This is good because what it does is we're
idiots.
yeah. And
Well,
and
it's because
context.
here's what happened. Ready?
Yep.
You had some experiences.
Yep.
You were like, it sounds like this text. Let's talk about it. We were like, yeah, that sounds great. Let's talk about it.
Yep.
Yeah.
And then as we're talking about it, we're
We
like,
looked
wait,
at the text
that
and we're
text
like,
isn't actually what we're talking about.
Yeah. So
Yeah. I mean, it's not a void conversation. It is, I think
not.
it is void in terms of this text.
of Philippians
For
2:14.
sure.
Yeah. So we've talked about don't grumble and complain. And now let's talk about Philippians 2:14.
Sure, there we go. Make it two separate conversations now.
Oh man. Micah's over here, hand in his face in his hand. But no,
I
we're
just had to freaking read it.
yeah. Well, you did read it. And
Yeah, it was
then,
funny. Yeah, we read it at the beginning.
yeah, but it's one of those things that like I mean, this is us and we're growing and none of us feel like
Idiots.
somebody out there is going, oh, finally, I've been yelling at my radio. I've been yelling at my radio.
Read the. This is our radio broadcast program.
How old am I?
I think it'd be fun at some point. Let's release a simpler radio. That's like it's a
There you go.
MP3 player.
no, not
kind of
MP3,
thing.
like a
Just
like
preloaded with all the stuff.
yeah,
on it.
like you can put your phone on and it
Oh,
plays
yeah.
that, but it looks like an old school radio.
Like a boom box.
There
You're
you
like,
go,
man.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. So
I mean, that's what the text is talking.
yeah, because then he says, look at verse 19. He says, I hope in the Lord Jesus to send Timothy to you soon so that I might be cheered by the news of you, for I have no one like him who genuinely is concerned for your welfare, for they all seek their own interests, not the interest of Christ. So that goes back to earlier, don't look out for your own interest, but the interest of others, talking about how the church should take care of each other, in contrast to how the world is doing it. And the world is grumbling and divided, but the church shouldn't be, which is parallel to what he says in Ephesians, the unity of the believer. And so we shouldn't grumble or dispute amongst ourselves either. But here's the thing. I know a lot of people who do that all the freaking time, right? They just grumble and complain. They grumble and they dispute with every believer.
So let's at least say this. All right. So the whole episode's void in comparison, from this text. But I do think, and this is what you're trying to say, I do think a lot of times those are the same people.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, I don't think the whole episode is void.
That's fair. The premise was wrong.
We can't use Philippians 2:14 for where we started.
Yeah. So let's just scratch that part.
Yeah. So throw out Philippians 2:14. I think we still agree that people who whine and complain all the time have a wrong perspective of eternity and a wrong perspective of Jesus.
Yeah.
So I feel like everything that we said there stands true. What we said about Philippians 2, connecting it to that is wrong. And now we step out and we say Philippians 2, he's like, quit arguing amongst yourselves.
Yeah.
Like we shine as lights in this dark
The
world.
unity is what shows, which is Jesus said it.
Yeah.
By this, all
absolutely.
men will know you're my disciples
Absolutely.
by the way you love one another.
That's John, what is that? 13, 34 and 35, something like that.
Yep. I think that's right.
And so, so we have to quit being divided with the believers as well.
Yeah.
And we have to quit making them our enemies and quit, we're going to be different people. We're going to have different personalities. We're going to have different giftings and strengths, and we're going to have different failures and flaws.
We're going to dispute about some theological things.
Yeah. And we have to be able to say, kind of back to what we said last week, Romans 14, okay, you stand or fall to the Lord, and he's able to make his servant stand. So I'm not going to judge you because you don't eat meat, and you're not going to judge me because I do eat meat, and we're going to seek to honor the Lord together. We're not going to be divided over the issue of meat. We're going to be united over the issue of Christ. Yeah. Which is what he got back to, isn't there Christ? Isn't there affection for Jesus? Isn't there this? Then stand firm with me in this way and don't look for your own interest, but also the interest of others. So that's kind of the key connector there. probably the people who are grumbling and disputing are looking out for their own interests.
Mm-hmm.
They're selfish.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that this is a good attack. Quit being whiners, quit being complainers, have an eternal perspective, but also quit being selfish and serve one another the same way Christ served.
Yeah.
Because that's the call here. So Paul lifts himself up as an example first, like do it like I'm doing it. And then he lifts up Christ as an example if you weren't satisfied with the Pauline example. And then he says, like, serve one another in this way.
Yep.
And so part of working out your salvation with fear and trembling here and contextually is the service of one another.
Yeah.
So the outworking of our salvation is that we serve one another without grumbling or disputes, and we minister to each other's needs.
That's totally right.
Well, thanks for coming on this journey.
It was
with
fun.
us.
I mean, to be fair, I guess it's kind of it's a good look for people. This is literally what our conversations often are.
Mm-hmm.
We'll be working through something, talking through it, and then one of us will be like, it's usually we're like, wait a minute.
Yeah.
What about what if this text is, and we're like, oh yeah, it is saying that.
Yeah, this was kind of like a fifth Tuesday conversation. We hadn't really prepped it. And so
I think the past 3 weeks were kind of all fifth conversations. Last week there was a lot of defining terms of like, what do we mean by this? What do we mean by this?
I think part of that's because we've been so busy with the building lately.
It's true.
We haven't had a lot of time to like. Us three haven't spent a lot of time together in the last few months.
No, we
outside of this.
Yeah. And so it's good conversations.
Mm-hmm.
And it shapes us. And I think it's really good for the listeners to know that, like, here we are, 50 and in the 40s and in the 30s, and we're all growing. Mm-hmm. We're all still learning and having these conversations. And you're thinking, man, Ryan's 50 and he's still this stupid?
Yeah.
Yes.
We're
exactly.
50.
I love it.
Old.
I've been excited about it since I turned 40.
Are you excited about 60 now?
Oh, I can't wait.
Good.
What are you excited about 60?
If I'm being completely transparent about it, I'm trying to quit saying that, by the way. If I, like people say, if I'm going to be honest, which implies that you're normally lying. Yeah. So I'm trying to quit
slightly
saying,
opaque otherwise. Yeah.
So everything up to my 30s just felt hard, and I felt like at 30, I started becoming the man I wanted to be. A year later, I met my wife, and that's been fun. 30s have been fun and really formative for me, but 40s have been really, the end of my 30s and the early 40s were dynamic in shaping my theology. Huge. Mm-hmm. And I've grown so much in my 40s that, like, for me, I can't wait to see what the 50s reveals, because the learning curve seems to be getting steeper. It's not plateauing.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's faster. It feels like it's coming faster. And so I can't wait to see what the next decade holds.
I'm excited to hear what whenever you do turn 60, what your adjective was for your 50s. Because at first it was really formative and it was dynamic. And so now what's the 50s going to be? I thought I hit you earlier.
He won't mess with us.
Do you remember that time that there was a wasp nest in here?
I do.
And we had 30 of them in here.
That's when we bought that salt gun.
Yeah.
Is it still in here?
Yeah, he's over there.
No, the salt gun.
Oh, I don't know.
Probably not.
So I guess we're done with this because
we're staring at a wasp.
Yeah.
That's true. What's the simpler review for us, Micah? Read context?
Yes, please.
Duh.
Hey, listen. Don't dispute with us and grumble against us about how bad this podcast
for this episode
was.
Yeah.
Because we're
for 40 minutes
believers.
going down the wrong direction. Yeah.
So don't grumble.
It's a worthwhile conversation from the wrong place.
It is, yeah.
So I don't feel bad that we had the conversation.
No.
It is not.
And we won't make that mistake again.
We're going to try not to make that mistake.
Sorry, we won't make that mistake again with Philippians 2:14.
Correct.
Yeah, that's a good point.
I can't guarantee we won't make that mistake again with other places. Honestly, though, I think that's what's fun about the growth, though.
100%.
We just had a 40-minute conversation and then went, wait a minute, it's text us talking about something else, which, to be fair, is pretty typical for us as we're walking through texts. We typically don't do it on a podcast.
But I mean, of it. Yeah, you and I have done that for 23 years.
Yeah.
Pierce has been doing that with us for 14.
It just feels stupid because we just did an entire podcast
Yeah.
But whatever.
Using the wrong platform.
Yeah.
But we say that a lot, like that there are people who will use verses out of context, and we're like, I agree with what they're teaching. I think they used the wrong verse.
And then we just did like a whole
And
episode.
so that's us.
Yeah.
We still agree with what we're teaching.
That's right.
We just shouldn't have used
At
Philippians
least you
2.
caught it before we were done, because if not, then we would have had to come back and re-record an episode being like, listen, we were off on this. Like this was the wrong context.
Surprise.
Yeah.
Surprise.
I don't have a simpler view. I'm too like
You
No, I
know,
feel you.
hey, you know the meme with the lady from like the 70s, and it's like surprise, surprise.
I don't.
Seen that? I'll have to show it to you. She needs to be the picture for this episode.
That's right.
Because it's like, hey, surprise, surprise.
maybe the title of
twist.
this should be "The Price Is Wrong, Bob."
That's right. That's wrong, Bob. Well, we could have really pulled it off and be like, I gotcha. We scripted it the whole time. We did not though. Well, hey, thank you guys for being a part of it. I honestly, like, I'm thankful that we, like I said earlier, like these types of conversations like highlight the heart behind what we wanted to do with Simpler, like the importance of community, being able to openly talk about the things of the scripture without becoming prideful in our understanding of it, and being able to like
Easiest way to do that is just to screw up a little bit.
Yeah, I know, right? And so like, and then being able to dictate like, okay, well, what's true in the midst of this? How can we? We have to acknowledge the context. How do we acknowledge that in the book of Philippians? But also thinking about what we talked about in regards to a heart bent on glorifying God. So anyway, I'm glad you guys could be a part of it, listening and watching it. And honestly, we encourage you to have that type of community in your life as well, to get around believers that encourage you, that challenge you, that push you. You can just discuss the things of the Bible openly and freely within conversation, so that you can come to a place where you better know and understand who God is and what he's accomplished, and be able to build up each other in the midst of that. So thank you guys for joining us. If you are, wherever you are right now, stop it and go over to YouTube and search for Simpler Pod and subscribe to our channel. We are trying to build up our base over there to get over 1,000 subscribers, so that we can begin to see revenue coming in through that channel. It would be awesome to be able to have the Simpler podcast be financially self-sufficient, and being able to gain revenue from that channel will be a huge help. So all you have to do is go over there, search for Simpler Pod, and tap subscribe on our channel. Down in the show notes below, you'll see links to various sites: Simpler Bible, Eagles Wings, Disc Golf, as well as the 456 Church. Click on all these places. This is where we are involved in doing ministry in different capacities. And so check those things out if you want to. There are also opportunities through Simpler Bible and through Micah's ministry site to be able to join along financially and give on there. So if you're so inclined, to go check that out. If you have questions about those things as well, there are links down below where you can reach out to us, our social media pages, as well as the Simpler social media pages, as well as our individual social media pages. So anyway, all this to say a bunch of things. We love you guys as a community. We're so thankful for y'all as a Simpler community, and we want to be able to have every resource available for you guys to grow and to learn and to build up others as well. So thankful for you guys, and as always, keep Christ as core. What could be simpler than that? We'll catch y'all next week. Bye.